Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you how you can group variances in Excel to make your data analysis process a lot easier and for it to be easier to visualize your variances as well in a chart. So here I've got 10 sales reps, I've got their target sales and what their actual sales came in at. So to calculate my variance, I'm going to take the actual sales less the target sales. So if it's a positive number, that means they came in better than their target, and negative would mean they missed it. So now we've got those variances, but obviously looking at this, it's hard to conceptualize it just by looking at it because we've got pluses and minuses and all these things. So ideally we put this in a chart, but we can't. It's not ideal to put these types of variances in a chart just because we have different values. And so in an ideal situation, we group these into a category. And so in order to do that, I'm going to need to set up another table. One, so I can set a threshold and the related category for that. So one field will be called threshold. One is my variance category. And in this example, I'm going to use this lookup table. I'm going to use a VLOOKUP for it. So I'm not looking for an exact match. So it's important I set my values from lowest to highest. So what I'm going to do is start with a minus 10,000 being my lowest value. Now you could use a min function if you want to just grab the smallest, but if you also know what range your data is in, you can just as easily hard code it in there as your lowest extreme value. So I'm going to call this significantly below expectations. The next threshold is going to be 1,000, and this will be below expectations. So what that means is if someone's at minus 9,000, minus 8,000, minus 7, minus 6, minus 4, all the way up to minus 2, they're going to be categorized as significantly below expectations. Until they reach this minus 1,000, unless they reach that minus 1,000, they're going to be there. Once they hit minus 1,000 or better, then they'll be just below expectations. If they hit 0, then we'll say they met expectations. So obviously the bucket between 10,000 and 1,000 is going to be much more significant than below expectations and met expectations, which is just going to be 1,000. We've got 1,000 and 0 here, so not a big gap. So obviously you can set these up however big or small you want. Next, I'm going to do 1,000 on the positive side. I'll call this exceeded expectations, and then 10,000 on the positive side for significantly exceeded expectations. And so now my table is set up. What I can do now is use the VLOOKUP function. So I'm going to select my value here, select my table, and because I'm pulling the second column, I'm going to indicate that. And now for the range lookup, normally with a VLOOKUP, a lot of times we're looking for an exact match. In this case, I just want an approximate match. So I'm going to set this to true. Just to make it abundantly clear, I do not want an exact match. So now we've got this, copy it down. And so now we can see the met expectations. There was only one that fell into that narrow bucket because it was only 500. But other ones, 1,000 was right at below expectations. 4,000 exceeded, which is correct. So nothing that significantly exceeded. So I could adjust this to say, okay, if someone hit 5,000, I'll say that they significantly exceeded. So I can adjust this, and now that 5,000 becomes significantly exceeded, right? So we could adjust these however it is we want. Like if this was, a little bit lower, let's say they only had 29,500, in which case they only had 4,500 was their positive variance, then they only exceeded expectations. They didn't breach that 5,000 level mark for them to fall into the significantly exceeded expectations. So the lookup table and the lookup formula are working correctly. And again, the key thing is to make sure that these values are going from smallest to largest, because if we mess up this order, then that's going to result in our values not being correct, our formulas not being correct. So if, for instance, I switch this up, went from largest to smallest, now we have errors, and now we have a positive 3,000 variance saying significantly below expectations. So we've essentially confused our VLOOKUP here, and it's not working properly. So I'm going to do Control Z here to undo that, and now we're fine again. So it's really important to make sure that those values are sort of from largest or from smallest to largest in that order. And so now, because we've got this set up, we can put this into an easy Excel chart that we can visualize these variances on. So now the next thing I'm going to do is use a COUNTIF function, so that way I can determine how many times a variance fell into a category. So using the COUNTIF function, I'm going to specify the range that I'm looking at and my criteria. And by doing this, I can see that 4 times a rep exceeded expectations, twice they fell below expectations, and twice they were significantly below expectations. So I can easily now convert this into a visual. I can insert a column chart. You may prefer a pie chart, for example, but either way, you have a lot of options. Once you've grouped your variances, it's a lot easier to visualize the data. One thing I like to do with column charts is shrink the gap so that it's only, say, 50%, less white space. And then in this case, I want to format the axis so they're in reverse order. So I've got the good ones, the significantly exceeding expectations at the beginning. And then the only other thing I may want to do is change the colors so that first one is dark green, then a lighter shade of green, and then perhaps more of a pale shade. And then if they're below expectations, perhaps red, and then a dark red for significantly below. So as you can see, by doing this, now it's a lot easier to visualize our variances, to see where we had, which category contained the most variances, which one had the least. And that way, if you update your data, this visual will obviously update as well and give you a better way, an easier way to visualize your variances, as opposed to just looking at these values. So again, the key thing is really create that lookup table, that table that you want to use to determine your thresholds and your variance categories, and then making sure it's going from ascending order from smallest to largest, and then just doing a simple VLOOKUP, making sure that last argument is set to true. And then once you've counted those variances, convert it to a chart, and then you've got a visual that's a lot easier to understand and to communicate to other people how in this case these sales reps did, and makes it a bit easier than just looking at these numbers and trying to analyze it that way. So that's a wrap for this video. If you did like it, please make sure to leave a like and be sure to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.